I was sitting home in 2008, and I made a decision, I made a commitment at that time to go out and work for Obama, that I was not going to sit home and allow another Republican to be elected. And the reason was not the label so much as what they were doing in Washington. I didn't agree with this, and I thought it was a bad thing, so I was going to fix that. And I've been doing that sort of thing ever since. I worked for Obama in 08 and 12, and I worked for Hillary, knocking on doors, folding envelopes, etc. And I'm working now in Rappahannock County for the County Democratic Party, doing whatever is necessary. I walk into the county office and say, hey, give me something to do that nobody else wants to do. So I can do this, and then you can do something more important and to further the cause. I look at it kind of as a civic duty, that citizens have a responsibility to participate in the political process, who get involved, to think about what you want your politicians to do, and then support people who you think will do the things that you need to get done. We look here in the county, and I hear people complain, oh gee, you know, we don't have this and we don't have that. Well, the reason we don't have it is because you didn't go to the polls and vote for people who would do that. So complain about money, there's no money for the schools. Well, a lot of the money comes from the feds, from federal taxes, and it trickles down to the state, it trickles down to the county, and we use it to support the schools. If Republicans cut taxes at the federal level, there's no money to go to the state, there's no money to go to the county, and we don't have any money in the school. So if you don't like that, fix it. We don't have to have a revolution in this country. We have polls, and every 2 years, every 4 years, you can go to the polls and vote for somebody else. And that's what I'm doing, and that's what I'm encouraging everybody else to do. We're in the Democratic Party now here. We have activities. I'm in charge of the canvassing effort to go knock on doors and talk to voters personally. I think that's an important activity. It's a way of talking to people, meeting voters, seeing what they're thinking about. I'm appalled at the number of people who aren't thinking about anything. They have no concept, don't know there's an election. They do after I leave, but when I knock on the door, they're not aware that there's an election coming up. And that's important, to be aware. I always ask people, where do you get your information? Where do you get your news? Where do you go to find out what's going on in the world? Do you know what's going on in the world? A lot of people don't know because it takes a little extra effort to find out. I was sitting in McDonald's 2 weeks ago. I like to sit there and have an egg and cheese biscuit and read the Washington Post. So that's what I was doing at the Washington Post out there. Some guy slid in next to me and said, gee, it's nice to see people reading. So people don't read anymore. So you look around McDonald's, and I was the only one reading. But that's okay. I do that every day. Every morning I read the Washington Post first thing on my list. So I know what's in the newspaper every day. Everybody doesn't have to read the Washington Post, but you have to go to some reliable source for news. And that does not include most of television. Certainly doesn't include Fox News. So who do you vote for? Obviously, I'm a Democrat, and I support Leslie Cockburn in the 5th Congressional District. I've talked with her many times. I work with her campaign because I have confidence in her that she will do the right things in Washington that will benefit this county and the people of the country in general. She stands for all the right things in promoting health care for all, for example, expanding checks on gun use and purchases, etc. That's an interesting issue, but there are lots of things to say. But first, I own guns. I have several in my house, in my garage. I shoot guns every once in a while, just for entertainment. Nobody is going to come and take my guns away. Nobody, or yours either. That's not on the agenda. But we have to do something to control what's happening with guns. Make gun owners, I think, make gun owners more responsible for what happens with their guns. That would go a long way. And it's probably a case that there's no magic answer. There's no one thing that you can do that's going to solve the gun problem. I went to a lecture once by a Frenchman who was finally successful in limiting smoking in France. Oh my God, can you imagine that? He took smoking out of restaurants in France everywhere. So he was talking about all the things that he did to accomplish this goal. And a little hand went up in the back of the room, and then the girl asked, well, what was the most important thing, the key thing that you did that turned the tide? What's the essential ingredients in that program? And he said, there's no key. You have to do it all. And that's probably the case with gun violence also. There's no one thing that you can do that's going to solve that problem. You have to chip away at the edges and keep working on it. And I think Leslie Cockburn will do that. She has that basic goal of limiting gun violence. And how it's going to get done is open to some discussion and negotiation, etc. So, all of those things. Same with healthcare. We need to provide healthcare for everybody. Healthcare, I believe, have come to believe, is a basic human right in this country. We must, as a government, provide health care for all of our citizens. How we're going to do that, we can talk about that. There are lots of proposals on the table, maybe more ideas once we start talking, but yeah, we need to do that basic goal. One objection that's raised is, oh, it's expensive. Well, not really. It depends on your accounting. If you take into account all the money we're now spending on health care and put that into one package, I bet you could bring the cost down a lot. I used to boast that I could go into any provider institution and take 20% off their costs virtually overnight, maybe in a week or so, but just by cutting out things that they're doing that they don't need to be doing. It's huge, and a lot of waste in hospitals. We could talk for hours about that, but it can be done. We can bring down the costs of healthcare, but we have to have a reason and have to push healthcare organizations to reduce their costs. I think Leslie has a goal of providing healthcare to everyone. I know she does, and I don't think she has some magic plan that's going to do this like overnight, but she has that long-range goal. She'll work toward that a lot of different ways. Education is another issue. I volunteered last year in a preschool, 6 months to 6 years old. And you think, okay, these little kids, what is the benefit of going to this school? And it's not cheap. The tuition at the school where I work was like $1,400 a month per child. Wow. That's almost as much as going to college. That's a huge expense for the family. What's the benefit of it? The benefits in the long term are huge. And if you look at it as a community, if you say, well, we'll start school instead of starting first grade, we'll start at age 3 and have compulsory education from age 3. The benefits are enormous. If you look down the road at kids who go to a preschool at age 3 and kids who do not, the kids who start early stay in school. They don't quit high school. They don't get pregnant. They don't go to prison, don't get in trouble with the law as often. It's a percentage thing. But they generally do better in life. They get a better education. They tend to go to college. They have higher incomes when they're adults, and they pay more in taxes. And the benefits on the outcome far outweigh the cost of sending this kid to preschool at age 3. And that's huge. And I know Leslie supports education and supports preschool education in Virginia. And I think that's important, and that's why I support her.